The thunderous sound of hooves pounding against the hard, packed earth echoed through the open plains, as Zara Turner's world turned upside down. One moment she was seated atop her chestnut mare, the next she was flying through the air, her husband's enraged face the last thing she saw before the ground rushed up to meet her. Wyoming Territory, 1878. The unforgiving land could be cruel, but Zara was learning that people could be crueler. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs. Dust clouded around her as she gasped for breath, her body screaming in pain. Through tear-blurred vision, she saw her husband, Edgar, dismounting his stallion, his face contorted with the same rage that had become all too familiar in their 3 years of marriage. "I told you to keep up," Edgar snarled, stalking toward her like a predator. "Worthless woman, can't even stay on a horse properly." Zara tried to scramble backward, her calico skirt tangling around her legs. She'd done nothing wrong. Edgar had deliberately spooked her horse. He'd been drinking since sunrise, as had become his habit since they'd lost their small ranch to gambling debts. "Please, Edgar," she pleaded, raising her arm to shield herself from the inevitable blow, but the blow never came. Instead, a shadow fell across her, and a deep voice cut through the tension like a knife. "That's enough." The stranger stood between them, tall and imposing against the harsh sunlight. His stance was casual, but there was nothing casual about the way his hand rested near the holstered Colt at his hip. Edgar stopped short, his eyes narrowing. "Mind your own business, stranger. This is between me and my wife." "When a man throws a woman from a horse, it becomes everybody's business," the stranger replied evenly. He turned slightly, offering Zara a hand without taking his eyes off Edgar. "Are you hurt, madam?" Zara hesitated, years of submission warring with the desperate hope this stranger represented. Her side ached fiercely where she'd landed, and she could feel blood trickling from a cut on her cheek. "I'm fine," she lied automatically, the words practiced from years of concealing Edgar's abuse. The stranger didn't believe her for a second. He kept his hand extended. "Name's Mason Hayes. I'm heading to Cottonwood Springs. I'd be honored to escort you there safely." Edgar's face darkened dangerously. "She ain't going nowhere with you. Zara, get back on your damn horse." Mason didn't move. "Madam, I don't mean to step between husband and wife, but I can't in good conscience ride away and leave you here." Zara looked from Mason to Edgar, seeing her husband's rage building like a summer storm. She'd seen that look before, the one that preceded his worst outbursts. With sudden clarity, she realized this might be her only chance at escape. "I would appreciate your escort, Mr. Hayes," she said softly, taking his offered hand. Edgar lunged forward. "You ungrateful." Mason moved so quickly Zara barely saw it happen. One moment Edgar was charging toward them, the next he was sprawled in the dust, a trickle of blood running from his nose. "I don't hit men unless they deserve it," Mason said calmly, "and you surely deserve it. Now I suggest you get on your horse and ride away before I forget my manners entirely." Edgar climbed to his feet, hatred burning in his eyes. "This ain't over. She's my wife. The law's on my side." "Maybe," Mason conceded, "but I'm on hers, and right now that's what matters." He helped Zara to her feet, steadying her when she swayed slightly. "Can you ride, madam?" Zara nodded, though every movement sent pain shooting through her ribs. Her mare had calmed and now stood nearby, reins dragging in the dirt. Mason walked her to the horse and helped her mount, his touch respectful and careful. Edgar watched them, his breathing heavy and irregular. "You'll regret this, Zara. I'll find you." "Not if you value your hide," Mason replied, swinging onto his own stallion. "Cottonwood Springs has a decent sheriff, might be interested to hear how you treat your wife." They rode away, leaving Edgar fuming in the dust. Zara didn't look back. She couldn't bear to. The further they rode, the more the reality of what she'd done settled over her. She'd left her husband. Women didn't leave their husbands. What would become of her now? "You're shaking," Mason observed after they'd ridden for nearly an hour. "I've never." Zara swallowed hard. "I've never defied him before." Mason's expression softened. "It took courage to do what you did back there. Or foolishness, she countered, wincing as her horse navigated a rough patch of ground. I have nowhere to go, no money of my own. Edgar controlled everything. Cottonwood Springs is a decent town, Mason offered. People there help each other. And I know the owner of the boarding house. Ruth's a good woman. She might have worked for you. Zara studied her rescuer properly for the first time. Mason Hayes was perhaps 30, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, and there was a quiet confidence in his bearing that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally. "You don't know me." Mason was quiet for a long moment. "My sister was married to a man like your husband. Nobody helped her when she needed it most." His jaw tightened. "I swore I'd never stand by and watch that happen to another woman." The simple honesty in his words brought tears to Zara's eyes. "I'm sorry about your sister." "So am I," he replied softly. "So am I." They made camp as the sun began to set, finding a small copse of trees near a stream. Mason insisted on checking Zara's injuries, his expression grim as he noted the older bruises partially hidden beneath her fresh ones. "How long?" he asked quietly as he helped her clean the cut on her cheek. Zara looked away. "It wasn't always bad. When we first married, Edgar was kind. But then the drought came and we lost the crops. He started drinking, gambling. Each loss made him angrier and I was convenient." Mason's hands stilled. No woman deserves to be treated that way, no matter the circumstances. "I know that now," Zara whispered. "I think I've always known it, I just didn't know how to leave." They ate a simple supper of jerky and hardtack, and Mason offered Zara his bedroll, insisting he was used to sleeping under the stars. As exhaustion pulled at her, Zara found herself studying her unlikely savior as he tended the small fire. "What takes you to Cottonwood Springs?" she asked. Mason prodded the embers with a stick. "I've been offered work at the Double R Ranch outside town. They need an experienced foreman, and I've been drifting long enough." "You're a cattleman, among other things," he acknowledged. "Drove cattle up from Texas twice, worked as a scout for the Army for a spell, tried my hand at silver mining in Colorado." A wry smile crossed his face. "None of it stuck, but I'm good with horses and cattle and I know ranching. Time to put down some roots, I reckon." Zara considered his words. "I can't remember the last time I thought about the future. With Edgar, it was just surviving each day." Mason's eyes reflected the dancing flames. "Well, Miss Zara, tomorrow's a new day, and for the first time in a while you get to decide what it brings." The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Zara closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she slept without fear. They reached Cottonwood Springs by midday the following day. The town was larger than Zara expected, a proper street lined with businesses, a church with a white steeple, and homes spreading outward from the center. It wasn't bustling like Denver or Cheyenne, but it had a settled, prosperous feel that spoke of stability. Mason guided them to a 2-story building with a neatly painted sign. "Turner House, clean rooms, fair prices." "No relation to you, I assume?" he asked with a smile. Zara shook her head, returning his smile tentatively. It felt strange, smiling. Her face wasn't used to it anymore. Ruth Turner proved to be exactly as Mason had described, a good woman with a practical approach to life's problems. She took one look at Zara's bruised face and made up her mind. "You'll stay here," she declared, showing Zara to a small but clean room at the back of the house. "I can use help with the washing and cooking, room and board plus $2 a week. Fair?" Zara could hardly believe her ears. "More than fair, Mrs. Turner." "Ruth," the older woman corrected, "and I don't need to know your story, child. Your face tells me enough." She patted Zara's hand. "Men like that don't change. You did right to leave." Mason waited downstairs, shifting awkwardly when Zara returned. "I should get out to the Double R, let them know I've arrived." "Of course," Zara said, suddenly aware of how much she'd come to rely on this stranger in just one day. "Mr. Hayes, I don't know how to thank you." "Mason," he corrected gently. And no thanks needed. I'll check on you in a few days if that's all right. Make sure you're settling in. Warmth bloomed in Zara's chest. I'd like that. The next few weeks passed in a blur of new routines. Zara found the work at the boarding house challenging but satisfying. Ruth was firm but kind, teaching Zara the efficient ways of running the establishment. The physical evidence of Edgar's abuse faded, though Zara knew the invisible scars would take longer to heal. Mason visited regularly, bringing small gifts, a book of poetry, fresh apples from the ranch's orchard, a length of blue ribbon that matched her eyes. They talked for hours on Ruth's porch, Zara gradually sharing more of her life, Mason offering stories of his travels across the frontier. She learned he'd fought in the war as a young man, barely 16 when he'd enlisted with the Union. He'd lost his parents to influenza when he was 20, and his sister died 2 years later at her husband's hands. The tragedy had set him to wandering, unable to settle, carrying guilt that he hadn't been there to save her. "You can't save everyone," Zara told him one evening, the setting sun painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Mason's eyes found hers. "But I saved you." The words hung between them, charged with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. Zara looked away first, her heart hammering in her chest. "Edgar will find me eventually," she said quietly. "Men like him don't let go easily." Mason's expression hardened. "If he comes to Cottonwood Springs, he'll have me to deal with." But the threat came sooner than either expected. Just over a month after Zara's arrival in town, Edgar Turner showed up at the boarding house, sober and coldly determined. Zara was hanging laundry in the backyard when she heard his voice from inside. Panic froze her in place, the wet sheet slipping from her fingers to the ground. "I know she's here," Edgar was saying, his voice carrying through the open window. "Zara is my wife, and I've come to take her home where she belongs." "I don't know who you're talking about," Ruth replied evenly, though Zara could hear the tension in her voice. "Don't lie to me, old woman. I've asked around town. People have seen her." Zara forced herself to move, slipping through the back gate and into the alley. She needed to find Mason, but the double R was miles outside town. Sheriff Donovan might help, but he was new to the position and might simply see this as a domestic dispute, not his concern. She was halfway down the alley when she heard Edgar's angry shout from the backyard. He'd found the laundry she'd abandoned. He would know she was close. Zara ran, her heart pounding. She darted across the main street and into the general store, startling the shopkeeper and the lone customer examining rifles at the counter. "Zara," the customer turned, and relief flooded through her as she recognized Mason. "What's wrong?" "Edgar," she gasped. "He's here at the boarding house." Mason's expression darkened. He set down the rifle he'd been examining and moved toward her. "Did he hurt you?" "No, I ran before he saw me, but Mason, he's determined to take me back." "That's not going to happen." Mason guided her toward the door, peering out cautiously. "Wilson," he addressed the shopkeeper, "is there a back way out of here?" The man nodded toward a rear door. "Through the storeroom, but what's no time to explain. If a man comes asking for Mrs. Turner, you haven't seen her." They slipped through the storeroom and out into the back alley. Mason kept Zara close as they made their way toward the livery stable. "I'll take you out to the double R," he said. "You'll be safe there until I can deal with Edgar." "Deal with him how?" Zara asked, fear making her voice tremble. "Mason, he won't stop, and I can't keep running." Mason stopped, turning to face her fully. "Do you trust me, Zara?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Then trust me to handle this. I won't let him hurt you again." At the livery, Mason quickly saddled 2 horses. They were just leading them out when Edgar appeared at the entrance, his face twisted with triumph when he spotted Zara. "There you are, wife," he sneered, stepping forward. "Time to come home." Mason moved in front of Zara. "She's not going anywhere with you, Turner." Edgar's hand moved to his hip where a revolver hung. "This doesn't concern you, Cowboy. She's my wife under the law." "The law doesn't give you the right to beat her," Mason countered. "Now turn around and leave Cottonwood Springs. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." Edgar drew his gun with surprising speed. I'm not leaving without what's mine. Several things happened at once. Mason pushed Zara behind him as Edgar fired, the bullet whistling past them and splintering a wooden post. Mason's own gun appeared in his hand, but before he could fire, Sheriff Donovan's voice rang out. "Drop it, Turner." The sheriff stood at the entrance to the livery, his rifle aimed squarely at Edgar. "I said drop it." For a tense moment, Edgar seemed to consider his options. Then, with a snarl, he let his gun fall to the dirt. "This man attacked me," Edgar protested as the sheriff approached. "I was just retrieving my wife." "That's not how the witnesses tell it," Sheriff Donovan replied, kicking Edgar's gun away. "Mrs. Green from the millinery saw you draw first. And I've heard some disturbing stories about how you treat your wife." He glanced at Zara, noting her frightened expression. "Madam, did this man abuse you?" Zara felt Mason's steadying presence beside her. For too long, she'd hidden Edgar's cruelty out of shame and fear. No more. "Yes," she said clearly, "for nearly 2 years." The sheriff nodded grimly. "That's what I thought." He produced handcuffs and secured Edgar's wrists. "Edgar Turner, I'm arresting you for attempted murder and assault. You'll face the circuit judge when he comes through next week." "You can't do this." Edgar struggled against the restraints. "She's my wife, I have rights." "Not in my town you don't," the sheriff replied, marching him away. Zara's legs gave out as relief washed over her. Mason caught her before she could fall, guiding her to a hay bale. "It's over," he murmured, kneeling before her. "He can't hurt you anymore." Tears spilled down Zara's cheeks. What if the judge sides with him? What if Mason took her hands in his? "The judge will hear testimony from me, from Ruth, from anyone in town who's seen your injuries." "Edgar won't walk free, I promise you that." His confidence steadied her. "Thank you, Mason, for everything." His blue eyes studied her face, thumb gently wiping away a tear. "I should have told you this sooner, but I care for you, Zara. More than I thought possible after knowing you such a short time." Her heart skipped a beat. "I care for you too." A smile spread across his face, transforming it. "When this is all over, when Edgar's been sentenced, would you consider coming out to the Double R? Not as a housekeeper or a cook, but as my guest. I'd like to court you properly if you're willing." The words "court you" hung in the air between them, full of promise and possibility. Zara felt a flutter of fear. Could she trust again? But it was quickly overtaken by hope. "I'd like that," she whispered. The circuit judge arrived the following week, a stern man with shrewd eyes and a reputation for fairness. The trial was brief but thorough. Multiple witnesses testified to Edgar's violent nature and his attack at the livery. Zara herself spoke clearly about the abuse she had endured, her voice growing stronger with each word. Edgar was sentenced to 5 years in the territorial prison. As he was led away, he shot Zara a look of pure hatred, but for the first time, she felt no fear. He held no power over her anymore. "Are you all right?" Mason asked as they left the courthouse. Zara took a deep breath of the clean autumn air. "Yes, better than I've been in years." True to his word, Mason began courting Zara properly. He took her on picnics along the riverbank, escorted her to church socials, and brought her to the Double R to show her the life he was building there. The ranch owner, old Mr. Richardson, took an immediate liking to Zara and often invited them both to Sunday dinner. Winter settled over Wyoming Territory, bringing snow and bitter winds. Mason rode into town whenever weather permitted, sometimes staying at the boarding house when storms threatened. On Christmas Eve, he presented Zara with a delicate silver locket. "It was my mother's," he explained as he fastened it around her neck. "I've been carrying it for years, waiting for the right person to give it to." Zara touched the locket reverently. "It's beautiful, Mason, but I can't." "You can," he insisted gently, "because I love you, Zara Turner." The words, spoken so simply, filled her with joy. "I love you too." Their first kiss was tender, a promise of all that could be. By spring, Zara had moved to the Double R, taking a position as the ranch's housekeeper while continuing her courtship with Mason. The arrangement raised a few eyebrows in town, but Ruth Turner quickly silenced the gossips. "That girl deserves happiness." she declared firmly at the Ladies' Aid Society meeting. "And Mason Hayes is twice the man most of your husbands are." In April, with apple blossoms scenting the air, Mason proposed properly, down on one knee in the ranch's garden that Zara had lovingly restored. "I know you've had reason to distrust marriage," he said earnestly, "and I would understand if you never wanted to enter into it again. But I promise you, Zara, I will spend every day of my life making you happy if you'll let me." Tears of joy spilled down Zara's cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were wed in June in the Cottonwood Springs Church, Ruth standing as Zara's matron of honor, Mr. Richardson as Mason's best man. The entire town turned out for the celebration afterward, the community that had embraced Zara and helped her find her strength. As they danced under lantern light in the town square, Zara looked up at her husband, her choice, her love. "Happy?" Mason asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. Life at the Double R flourished under their care. When Mr. Richardson passed peacefully in his sleep that winter, they were shocked to discover he'd left the ranch to Mason in his will, having no children of his own. "He said you were the son he never had," the lawyer explained, "and Mrs. Hayes was the daughter he wished for." The responsibility was enormous, but together they made the Double R prosper. Zara planted an extensive vegetable garden and began raising chickens. Mason's innovative ranching methods drew notice from neighboring spreads. Their first child, a daughter they named Hope, arrived the following spring, with twin boys following 2 years later. Their family grew alongside their ranch, their home filled with laughter and love. Sometimes at night, Zara would wake from nightmares of her time with Edgar, the memories rising unbidden from the depths of her mind. But Mason was always there, his steady presence chasing away the shadows, reminding her that she was safe, she was loved. 10 years after Mason had first intervened on that dusty trail, they hosted a harvest celebration at the Double R. Friends and neighbors gathered to mark the end of a successful season. As twilight fell, Zara found herself standing on the porch, watching Mason swing their youngest daughter in circles, her delighted giggles carrying across the yard. Ruth Turner, now gray-haired but still sharp as ever, joined her at the railing. "You've built something beautiful here, Zara." "It still feels like a dream sometimes," Zara admitted. "That day when Mason stepped between me and Edgar, I was so certain my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning." "That's the thing about endings," Ruth said wisely. "Sometimes they're really doorways to something better." Mason caught Zara's eye across the yard and smiled, the same smile that had been her anchor through a decade of healing and growth. He set their daughter down and made his way to the porch, taking Zara's hand in his. "What are you two conspiring about?" he asked playfully. "Just counting our blessings," Zara replied, leaning into his embrace. And as the stars appeared one by one in the Wyoming sky, Zara Turner Hayes knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just safety or security, but the truest kind of love, one built on respect, kindness, and unwavering support. The kind of love worth riding into the unknown for. The kind that, even in the wild harshness of the frontier, could bloom and flourish, stronger than any storm.